Welcome back to another sunny edition of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Charles Inferno. We're at Forts Athletics. We equip coaches and athletes with the tools they seek out in order to achieve their unique and specific goals. And we are recording on Wednesday, August 31st. This is like the second episode that we're recording this morning on our way to school, as per usual. It's bright and early. We have students arriving in 8 days, which, I don't know if the adults are ready as much as the students are ready for what's going to happen here in the wild. But we've been talking this month about coach-athlete relationships and research best practices on how we as coaches can better facilitate and support creating environments that are going to allow our athletes to be successful and achieve their goals. And one of the interesting facets that I've been talking a lot about, I think it's interesting, and some of you have followed along on social media, is that as we get to know our athletes and as we get to know our teams, that helps us as coaches kind of figure out what exactly, not so much what the identity of the team is going to be, but the type of personality that the team is going to take on. And a way that happens is by communicating with our athletes and having an understanding of who our athletes are, where they're coming from, what their goals are, what they want to achieve, and why it's important to them. And when I was talking about in our last episode, talking about like team leaders and event group leaders, it's so important, I believe, to have specific athletes on the team that are going to help you as a coach take the temperature of what's happening around you, right? As coaches, we might not know everything about everything that's happening, which that could be good or bad depending on the circumstances, right? But in our small group, like this year, we have 7 throwers. We have Dylan coming back, which is an interesting situation unto itself. So really, we have a small event group, 6, 7, 8 athletes per event group. But among those event groups, we have an event group leader. We have one for our jumps, sprint hurdles, our distance crew, and they help us kind of just keep tabs. And I'm not talking about keeping tabs and like what's happening social media wise and things of that nature, but just to help coaches kind of, so-and-so and so-and-so might be having some personality conflicts, or this is what happened this weekend, just things to give us a heads up so we know how to best, either prepare for that day of practice, or if we need to intervene in some capacity and have a conversation, that we can do that. Because I think it's important to allow our athletes in those specific capacities opportunities to have a say and to have a voice, because that in total is really going to help build positive team culture, and it's going to show other athletes on the team that, coaches are really interested in what's happening. They're going to support us, they're going to intervene, and really just help give us the best opportunity we can to be successful in those types of capacities. And we do that by communicating. And that's something that in conducting my research and moving forward with a similar project, is that really a lot of coaches and researchers, sports psych, practitioners talk about communication and how effective coaches and athletes are in communicating expectations and having open lines of communication and feeling comfortable communicating with our athletes. And I think just looking at how my career has evolved as a coach, I was a little more fearful when I first started coaching at Fredonia to have those types of, I don't want to say confrontational because they really weren't confrontational, but more to the point conversations about things that it's easy to have positive conversations. More about holding athletes accountable with expectations. And I did a poor job of that when I first started coaching, of establishing expectations and even having our own athletes establish expectations of what they perceived or how they wanted their seasons to be perceived, or how they just, what they wanted to be held accountable for. And we didn't really have that. And then transitioning to NAS, I remember a lot of heart-to-heart conversations in the parking lot after practice with individual athletes, reviewing accountability points and reviewing expectations and what they and I could do to help get us back on track. So I feel like there was a lot of lost opportunity at Fredonia, just out of fear for me, not feeling comfortable engaging in that type of conversation. Where now, I don't know, it's because I'm older, just turned 40, maybe I don't mind as much anymore of pulling kids aside and having those more blunt and frank conversations about, hey, you said you wanted to do this, you're not doing what you need to do to get there. So how is that helping you? How is that beneficial? What else can I do to help you? What else do you need from the team? What else do you need from the coaching staff? And then it really puts the onus on our athletes, right? But we need to be able to communicate that and feel comfortable doing so. And it's really the conduit to everything that I have found in my research and communicating, or interviewing rather, Olympic throwing coaches, is that open lines of communication, effective communication, and being able to express how we want to, not how we want to lead, but just how important doing certain things are in order for athletes to achieve their goals. Now, the coaches that I interviewed all have coached multiple Olympic athletes, and communication was paramount in those regards, because and even a couple of coaches suggested as such, once you get to a certain level of performance, it's everything else is going to play a much bigger role in their athlete's performance. So once you are already making the finals at the Olympic Games, or possibly medaling at the Olympic Games, we know the effort is there. We know that technique might be there. We know that the will, the determination, the grit, all of those things are there. But then it's the intangibles of what's it going to take for us to help our athletes get to the next level. And the coaches shared that they just had to be better communicators and understand how their athletes wanted to be communicated to, and how they wanted to be communicated to. So for the coaches that participated, they had coached athletes to the Olympics pre-social media. I guess it's not really funny as it sounds, but it did come up with a couple of younger athletes who had gone to the Olympics with multiple athletes about social media and just ways athletes want to be communicated with and how they want to be communicated with. So that's something, when I first started coaching in 2004, we really weren't, I wasn't really sharing a lot of technical cues on Facebook, and because nothing else had been invented yet, as far as your Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all these different other formats of being able to communicate oneself with with the greater population, the greater world. But really, everything comes down to communication and how we're willing to communicate and establish those lines of openness with our athletes, preseason, during the season, postseason, at meets, after meets, before meets, the bus ride, all those different things, all those different ways of communication are going to play a role in ultimately determining how well our athletes are going to perform when it's time to perform in competition. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Charles Inferno, and have a great day.